Mind Silence, written and published by Ngasline. In the ceaseless storm of modern consciousness, where thoughts cascade like digital notifications and worries loop like endless background programs, lies an often overlooked truth. The mind's natural state is one of profound quiet and clarity. Yet most of us have forgotten how to access this innate stillness, our mental space cluttered with anxiety, self-doubt, and recursive negative patterns that seem to run on autopilot. What ancient contemplatives and modern neuroscientists have discovered, however, is that the journey to mental silence isn't about forcing thoughts away or engaging in exhausting battles with our own minds. It's about understanding the subtle mechanisms that automatically generate mental noise and learning to disengage from them naturally. Like a pond that settles on its own when we stop disturbing the water, our minds possess an organic capacity for stillness that emerges not through effort, but through the gentle art of letting go. Lesson 1. Silence clears what thinking cannot. Our minds are powerful problem-solving machines, constantly analyzing, categorizing, and seeking solutions to life's challenges. Yet there's a peculiar paradox at play. The more intensely we think about certain problems, particularly emotional or psychological ones, the more entangled we become in them. It's like trying to untie a knot by pulling both ends tighter. The very act of aggressive thinking can make our mental blocks more resistant to resolution. Traditional approaches to personal development often emphasize analytical thinking, self-reflection, and rational problem-solving. While these methods have their place, they frequently fall short when dealing with deep-seated emotional issues or persistent negative patterns. This is because our analytical mind operates within the same framework that created these problems in the first place. It's attempting to solve complex emotional equations using limited logical tools. The breakthrough comes when we recognize that silence, the absence of mental chatter, can accomplish what endless thinking cannot. When we allow our minds to settle into stillness, we activate different neural pathways and processing mechanisms. Research in neuroscience has shown that during periods of mental quiet, our brains engage in unique patterns of activity that promote integration and healing. This isn't merely theoretical. Consider how solutions to complex problems often appear when we're not actively thinking about them. Perhaps while taking a shower, going for a walk, or just before falling asleep. These moments of insight arise precisely because we've temporarily suspended our analytical thinking, allowing our minds to process information in a more holistic way. The science behind this phenomenon is fascinating. When we enter states of mental quiet, our brains shift from beta waves, associated with active thinking, to alpha and theta waves, which are linked to creativity, insight, and emotional processing. This shift enables our minds to bypass the usual mental resistance and access deeper levels of understanding. One simple way to experience this is through what I call the 3-minute silence exercise. Find a comfortable position and simply observe your thoughts without engaging with them for 3 minutes. Don't try to stop thinking. Just watch the thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky. You'll likely notice that some mental clarity naturally emerges during or shortly after this practice. Another powerful technique is mindful observation. Choose any ordinary object, a leaf, a cup, or a pencil, and observe it without naming or analyzing it. Just experience it directly, as if you're seeing it for the first time. This practice helps break the habit of constant mental commentary and demonstrates how clarity can arise from simple awareness rather than analysis. The key to understanding why silence works lies in recognizing that many of our mental blocks are maintained by our constant thinking about them. When we step back from this mental activity, we create space for natural resolution to occur. It's similar to how a muddy pond becomes clear when we stop stirring it. Clarity emerges naturally when we stop agitating our thoughts. This doesn't mean that analytical thinking is wrong or useless. Rather, it suggests that we need both active thinking and mental silence in our problem-solving toolkit. The art lies in knowing when to engage in analysis and when to step back and allow silence to do its work. By incorporating periods of mental quiet into our daily lives, we can begin to experience firsthand how silence clears what thinking cannot. This might feel counterintuitive at first, especially in a culture that values constant mental activity. However, as you practice stepping back from the continuous stream of thoughts, you'll discover that some of your most persistent problems begin to unravel on their own, simply because you've given them the space to do so. Lesson 2. Quiet minds heal themselves naturally. The human mind possesses an extraordinary capacity for self-healing that often goes unrecognized in our busy, thought-filled lives. Just as our bodies naturally heal cuts, bruises, and broken bones when given proper rest and care, our minds have an innate ability to repair emotional wounds, resolve conflicts, and restore balance when allowed to rest in quietude. This natural healing mechanism activates automatically when we step back from constant mental activity. Think of your mind as a glass of muddy water. When you stop stirring and allow it to be still, the sediment naturally settles to the bottom, leaving clear water above. Similarly, when we cease the perpetual stirring of thoughts, our mental clarity emerges naturally and healing begins. The challenge many face is the habit of overthinking, which keeps the mental waters continuously disturbed. We've been conditioned to believe that solving problems requires intense analysis and constant mental effort. This creates a cycle where thinking begets more thinking, and the mind never gets the rest it needs to engage its healing capabilities. Overthinking can manifest as repeatedly replaying past events, imagining future scenarios, or engaging in endless internal dialogue about our problems. Breaking this cycle requires trust in the mind's natural wisdom. Rather than forcing solutions through more thinking, we must learn to step back and allow our internal healing mechanism to operate. This means creating periods of mental rest throughout our day, where we consciously choose to disengage from the stream of thoughts and simply be present. One effective approach is to establish regular periods of quiet sitting where you focus solely on your breath or physical sensations. This isn't about forcing thoughts away, but rather about providing space for the mind to naturally settle. Start with just 5 minutes and gradually extend the duration as you become more comfortable with mental quietude. Another powerful technique is to practice mindful pauses during daily activities. When feeling overwhelmed or stuck on a problem, take a conscious step back. Rather than immediately trying to think your way through, allow yourself to exist in the space of not knowing. Often, solutions and clarity emerge spontaneously during these moments of mental rest. The mind's self-healing nature operates most effectively during sleep, which is why we often wake up with fresh perspectives on problems that seemed insurmountable the night before. We can create similar healing opportunities during our waking hours by incorporating mini-mental vacations throughout our day. These brief moments of conscious disengagement from thought allow our natural healing mechanism to engage. Physical relaxation plays a crucial role in supporting mental self-healing. When we release physical tension, we simultaneously create conditions for mental release. Simple practices like progressive muscle relaxation or gentle stretching can help initiate this process. As the body relaxes, the mind naturally follows, entering a state more conducive to self-repair. Understanding that healing doesn't require active participation from our thinking mind can be liberating. Instead of trying to force change or resolution, we can learn to trust our mind's innate wisdom. This trust develops gradually as we witness how solutions and clarity naturally emerge when we step back from constant mental activity. Creating an environment that supports mental self-healing is also important. This might mean reducing exposure to excessive stimulation, setting boundaries with technology, or creating quiet spaces in your home where you can regularly practice mental rest. These external adjustments support the internal conditions necessary for natural healing to occur. This process isn't about achieving a completely thought-free state. That's neither possible nor desirable. Instead, it's about creating enough mental space for your natural healing mechanism to operate effectively. As you practice allowing your mind to rest in quietude, you'll discover that healing occurs naturally and effortlessly, without the need for constant mental intervention. Lesson 3. Peace comes when thoughts slow down. The human mind processes thousands of thoughts daily, racing from one idea to the next like a hyperactive squirrel jumping between branches. This constant mental activity creates an internal noise that drowns out our natural state of peace. When we begin to understand the direct relationship between thought speed and inner tranquility, we unlock a powerful key to mental well-being. Think of your mind as a glass of muddy water. When the water is constantly stirred, the mud remains suspended, making the water appear cloudy and turbid. However, when you allow the water to be still, the mud naturally settles to the bottom, leaving the water clear and pristine. Our thoughts work similarly. When they race and swirl, our mental state remains clouded, but as thoughts begin to slow down, clarity and peace naturally emerge. The process of decelerating mental activity begins with awareness. Notice how your thoughts typically rush forward, each one pushing to be heard before the previous one has finished. This creates a mental traffic jam that generates stress and anxiety. By consciously observing this pattern without trying to change it, you've already begun the process of slowing down. The mere act of witnessing your thoughts creates a slight separation from them, like stepping back from a rushing stream to observe its flow from the bank. As thoughts begin to decelerate, you'll notice subtle changes in your experience. Colors might appear more vivid, sounds clearer, and physical sensations more distinct. These are signs that your awareness is shifting from the conceptual realm of thinking to the direct experience of the present moment. The spaces between thoughts become more noticeable, like the pauses between musical notes that give rhythm its beauty. Creating space between thoughts doesn't require force or effort. Instead, it's about developing a gentle curiosity about these natural gaps that already exist. When you're engaged in simple activities like washing dishes or taking a walk, notice the moments when thinking naturally subsides. These brief intervals of mental quiet offer glimpses of the peace that lies beneath the surface of constant mental chatter. The speed of thoughts often correlates with emotional states. Anxiety accelerates thinking, while calmness allows thoughts to flow more slowly. By intentionally slowing down physical movements and speech, you create a natural invitation for thoughts to decelerate as well. Speaking more slowly, eating more deliberately, and moving with greater awareness all contribute to mental deceleration. As your practice deepens, you'll discover that thoughts have their own natural rhythm. Just as your breathing slows down during relaxation, thoughts naturally decelerate when given space to do so. This process reveals an important truth. Peace isn't something we need to create or achieve. It's already present when thoughts slow down enough for us to notice it. The modern world often operates at an artificially accelerated pace, pushing our minds to match its speed. By consciously choosing to slow down our mental processes, we step out of this manufactured urgency and into a more natural rhythm. This doesn't mean becoming less effective or productive. Quite the opposite. When thoughts move at a more measured pace, our actions become more precise, our decisions clearer, and our energy more focused. Physical practices like gentle walking, slow breathing, or simply sitting quietly support this mental deceleration. These activities provide an anchor for awareness, giving the mind a steady point of reference around which thoughts can naturally slow down. As you become more familiar with slower thought patterns, you'll find yourself naturally gravitating toward this more peaceful state, even in the midst of daily activities. Slowing down thoughts isn't about suppressing or controlling them. It's about creating conditions where thoughts can find their natural, unhurried pace. This organic deceleration allows inner peace to emerge naturally, like the sun becoming visible as clouds gradually disperse. Lesson 4. Empty spaces remove mental blocks. Mental blocks are like invisible walls in our minds that prevent us from moving forward, creating or experiencing life fully. These blocks often manifest as resistance, fear, self-doubt, or recurring negative thoughts that seem impossible to overcome. Traditional approaches typically involve pushing against these blocks or trying to break through them with force of will. However, the most effective way to dissolve mental blocks is through creating empty spaces in our consciousness. When we think of empty space, we might imagine it as void or nothingness, but in the context of mind silence, These spaces are powerful zones of transformation. Just as a room needs empty space to be functional, our minds require mental gaps to process, heal, and transform. These spaces act as natural dissolvers of mental blocks, much like how silence naturally dissolves tension in a conversation. The power of mental gaps lies in their ability to interrupt the continuous flow of thoughts that maintain our blocks. When we create space around a mental block, we stop feeding it with our attention and energy. Think of it like a plant that needs constant watering to survive. When we create empty spaces, we stop watering the mental block and it naturally begins to wither away. Creating mental space involves a gentle practice of allowing gaps to emerge between thoughts. This isn't about forcing thoughts away or trying to maintain complete emptiness. Instead, it's about becoming aware of the natural pauses that already exist in our thinking process and gradually allowing these pauses to expand. As we practice this, we might notice that some thoughts seem to lose their grip on us, while others simply float away without requiring our engagement. One effective way to create these empty spaces is through the practice of conscious observation. When we encounter a mental block, instead of immediately trying to solve or remove it, we can create space around it by simply observing it without judgment. This creates a buffer zone between us and the block, allowing natural dissolution to occur. It's similar to watching clouds pass in the sky. We don't need to push them away. We simply observe them as they naturally dissipate. The practice of creating mental space also reveals an important truth. Many of our mental blocks are maintained by our constant attention to them. By learning to create empty spaces, we discover that blocks often dissolve not through direct confrontation, but through the absence of resistance. This is why forcing ourselves to get over mental blocks rarely works in the long term. Empty spaces in our consciousness also allow for new perspectives to emerge naturally. When we're constantly thinking about a problem or block, we tend to see it from the same angle repeatedly. But when we create space around it, we allow room for new viewpoints and solutions to arise spontaneously. This is similar to how taking a step back from a painting allows us to see the whole picture more clearly. The practice of creating mental space requires patience and trust in the process. It's common to feel an initial resistance to emptiness, as our minds are conditioned to constantly fill every moment with thought. However, as we become more comfortable with mental gaps, we begin to experience their refreshing and rejuvenating qualities. These empty spaces become oases of peace in our mental landscape, naturally dissolving blocks that once seemed permanent. As mental blocks begin to dissolve through the power of empty spaces, we often notice positive changes in other areas of our lives. Creativity flows more easily, decisions become clearer, and emotional responses become more balanced. This happens because empty spaces don't just remove blocks. They also create room for new possibilities and natural growth. Creating mental space is not about achieving a perfect state of emptiness. It's about developing a comfortable relationship with gaps in our thinking and recognizing their healing power. As we continue this practice, we discover that mental blocks need not be confronted or fought against. They can simply be allowed to dissolve in the empty spaces we learn to create. Lesson 5. Stillness reveals inner wisdom. The human mind possesses an innate wisdom that often remains hidden beneath layers of mental chatter and societal conditioning. When we achieve genuine stillness, this deep inner knowing naturally rises to the surface. Much like sediment settling in clear water allows us to see what lies beneath. This inherent wisdom differs fundamentally from learned knowledge or intellectual understanding. It's an intuitive knowing that emerges from our core being. In moments of true stillness, we tap into a vast reservoir of insight that transcends our usual thought processes. This wisdom doesn't arrive through logical deduction or analysis, but surfaces naturally when we create space for it to emerge. It's similar to how answers often come to us in the shower or during a quiet walk when we've stopped actively thinking about a problem. This phenomenon occurs because stillness allows our intuitive faculty to function without interference from our analytical mind. The quality of this inner wisdom is distinct from our regular thinking. While our everyday thoughts tend to be reactive, conditional, and influenced by past experiences, Intuitive wisdom carries a sense of certainty and timelessness. When it emerges, we don't need to question its validity. We simply know. This knowing feels different from reaching a conclusion through logical steps. It arrives whole and complete, often accompanied by a sense of rightness or peace. To access this wisdom, we must first learn to distinguish between the voice of intuition and the usual mental chatter. Intuitive insights typically arrive with clarity and simplicity, while mental noise tends to be complicated and circular. The intuitive voice speaks quietly but with authority, requiring no validation or justification. It often manifests as a subtle knowing in the body, a sense of expansion in the chest, or a feeling of deep peace. Creating conditions for inner wisdom to emerge requires regular practice in stillness. This doesn't mean forcing ourselves to be still, but rather allowing stillness to develop naturally. Start by setting aside time each day for quiet sitting, free from external stimulation. During these periods, resist the urge to seek answers actively. Instead, maintain an attitude of open receptivity, like leaving a door ajar for wisdom to enter. As you cultivate stillness, you might notice that insights often arise unexpectedly. They may come as gentle realizations, clear knowing, or sudden understanding. These moments of insight frequently occur when you're not trying to figure something out. They simply surface from the quiet depths of your consciousness. This natural emergence of wisdom demonstrates why forcing solutions through intense thinking often proves counterproductive. The practice of accessing inner wisdom through stillness gradually builds trust in our intuitive capabilities. As we experience the accuracy and effectiveness of insights received this way, we learn to rely less on external validation and more on our inner guidance. This shift represents a fundamental change in how we navigate life's challenges and make decisions. Regular encounters with inner wisdom through stillness also help dissolve the artificial boundary between our conscious and unconscious minds. We begin to experience ourselves as more integrated beings with access to deeper layers of understanding. This integration leads to more authentic and aligned choices in our lives, as we're no longer just operating from our conditioned thinking, but from a place of genuine knowing. Inner wisdom flows most freely when we release our attachment to specific outcomes or answers. Approaching stillness with an agenda or desperately seeking solutions often creates tension that blocks intuitive insight. Instead, cultivate an attitude of curious openness, allowing wisdom to reveal itself in its own time and way. This patient, trusting approach yields far richer results than demanding immediate answers. The relationship between stillness and inner wisdom grows stronger with practice. As you become more familiar with the quality of intuitive knowing, you'll find it easier to recognize and trust these insights when they arise. This developing relationship with your inner wisdom becomes an invaluable resource, guiding you through life's challenges with greater ease and clarity than intellectual analysis alone could provide. Lesson 6. Letting go happens in silence. The art of letting go remains one of life's most challenging yet essential skills. Many people struggle with releasing negative thoughts, emotions, and experiences precisely because they try too hard to force the process. True letting go occurs naturally in moments of silence, when we step back from our active attempts to control and manipulate our internal state. Consider how a tightly clenched fist naturally relaxes when attention is directed elsewhere. The same principle applies to our mental and emotional attachments. When we consciously try to let go of thoughts or feelings, we paradoxically strengthen our grip on them. The very act of trying creates tension and resistance. Instead, genuine release happens in moments of mental silence when we temporarily suspend our efforts to change or fix anything. The natural process of letting go can be observed in how we release physical tension. When you become aware of tense shoulders or a furrowed brow, simply noticing the tension without trying to change it often leads to spontaneous relaxation. Mental and emotional letting go follows the same pattern. By creating space through silence, we allow our psychological grip to loosen naturally. This process becomes particularly powerful when dealing with long-held negative beliefs or painful memories. Rather than attempting to argue with these thoughts or force them away, we can allow them to exist within the spaciousness of silence. Just as a tight knot begins to loosen when we stop pulling at the strings, our attachments begin to dissolve when we stop struggling against them. Silent practices that support natural release include simply sitting quietly and observing thoughts without engagement. As we watch our mental activity without trying to change it, we naturally begin to hold our thoughts more lightly. This creates space for natural release to occur. Another effective practice involves focusing attention on the silent spaces between thoughts, allowing these gaps to gradually expand. Progress in letting go can be noticed through subtle shifts in our relationship with challenging thoughts and emotions. We might observe that certain triggers no longer produce the same intense reactions, or that we can more easily step back from mental drama. These changes often occur so gradually that we only notice them in retrospect, like discovering that a wound has healed without our constant attention. The silence that facilitates letting go isn't limited to formal meditation practices. It can be found in simple daily moments, during a quiet walk, while watching the sunset, or in the peaceful moments before sleep. These natural pauses in mental activity create opportunities for spontaneous release. The key lies in recognizing these moments and allowing them to work their subtle magic without interference. Silent letting go also extends to our relationships and interactions with others. When we stop trying to force outcomes or change people, we create space for natural resolution and healing. This applies equally to old grudges, ongoing conflicts, and future anxieties. The silence allows these situations to untangle themselves naturally, without our conscious intervention. As we cultivate this approach, we begin to trust the process of natural release more deeply. We learn that our role isn't to force change, but to create conditions where letting go can occur organically. This might mean setting aside dedicated time for silence, developing a regular meditation practice, or simply becoming more aware of the quiet moments that naturally arise throughout our day. The practice of letting go through silence represents a fundamental shift from doing to being, from forcing to allowing. It acknowledges that our natural state is one of peace and release, and that by creating space through silence, we allow ourselves to return to this state naturally. This gentle approach proves far more effective than any amount of conscious effort or forced resignation. Lesson 7. Calm minds attract clear answers. A calm mind acts like a powerful magnet, naturally drawing in solutions and insights that remain hidden during times of mental turbulence. This phenomenon occurs because mental clarity creates the ideal conditions for recognizing answers that have been present all along, but were obscured by the noise of excessive thinking. The law of mental attraction operates on a simple principle. Like attracts like. When our minds are agitated and clouded with worry, we tend to attract more thoughts that match that confused state. Conversely, when we maintain mental calmness, we create a receptive space where clear solutions can emerge naturally. This is why our best ideas often come during moments of relaxation, such as while taking a shower or going for a walk, rather than when we're actively trying to force solutions. Mental noise acts as a barrier to receiving clear answers. When our minds are cluttered with endless chatter, we're essentially creating interference that blocks potential solutions from reaching our awareness. Think of it like trying to hear a whispered message in a room full of loud conversations. The message is there, but the surrounding noise makes it impossible to discern. Similarly, our inner wisdom and potential solutions are constantly present, but they become inaccessible when overwhelmed by mental static. Creating conditions for clarity requires a conscious effort to reduce mental noise. This doesn't mean forcing our minds to be quiet, as forcing creates its own form of interference. Instead, it involves developing a gentle awareness of our thought patterns and learning to create space around them. One effective approach is to practice mental pausing throughout the day. This involves taking brief moments to stop whatever we're doing and simply observe our current mental state without trying to change it. Regular meditation serves as another powerful tool for maintaining mental calm. Even just 10 minutes of daily meditation can significantly reduce the background noise in our minds. During meditation, We're not trying to achieve perfect silence, but rather developing our ability to observe thoughts without becoming entangled in them. This skill naturally transfers to our daily lives, helping us maintain clearer mental states even during challenging situations. Physical movement can also contribute to mental calm. Activities like walking, swimming, or gentle yoga help release physical tension that often contributes to mental agitation. When our bodies are relaxed, our minds naturally follow suit. The key is to engage in these activities mindfully, focusing on the physical sensations rather than using the time to mentally rehearse problems or scenarios. Environmental factors play a crucial role in maintaining mental calm. Creating spaces in our homes and workplaces that promote tranquility can significantly impact our mental state. This might involve decluttering physical spaces, establishing quiet zones, or incorporating elements of nature like plants or natural light. Our external environment often reflects and influences our internal state. The practice of journaling can help maintain mental clarity by providing an outlet for excessive thoughts. Writing down our concerns, ideas, and observations helps clear mental space, making room for new insights to emerge. The key is to write without judgment or analysis, simply allowing thoughts to flow onto paper. As we cultivate a calmer mental state, we often notice an interesting shift in how we approach problems. Instead of actively searching for answers, we develop a quiet confidence that solutions will emerge naturally. This trust in the process of mental clarity allows us to remain patient and composed, even when facing significant challenges. The relationship between mental calm and clear answers becomes self-reinforcing over time. As we experience the benefits of maintaining a quieter mind, we naturally gravitate toward practices and situations that support this state. The solutions and insights that emerge from this clarity then validate our approach, encouraging us to deepen our commitment to mental calmness. Lesson 8. Quietness dissolves old patterns. Our minds are incredible pattern recognition machines, constantly creating and reinforcing neural pathways based on our thoughts, behaviors, and experiences. While this capability serves us well in many aspects of life, it can also trap us in repetitive negative thinking patterns that no longer serve our highest good. The beauty of cultivating mental quietness lies in its ability to naturally dissolve these old patterns without the need for force or complex cognitive restructuring. Think of your habitual thought patterns as deep grooves in a record. Each time you play the record, the needle follows these same grooves, playing the same song over and over. These mental grooves become deeper with repetition, making it increasingly difficult to break free from established patterns. Traditional approaches often involve trying to create new grooves or forcefully lifting the needle, which can create resistance and frustration. Quietness offers a different approach. When we allow our minds to settle into silence, we create a space where these patterns naturally begin to lose their grip. It's similar to how a murky pond becomes clear when you stop stirring the water. The sediment simply settles to the bottom without any effort to filter or clean it. In the same way, mental quietness allows our thought patterns to naturally settle and dissolve. The process of pattern dissolution through quietness works at a neurological level. When we step back from constant mental activity, we give our brains the opportunity to rewire themselves. This neuroplasticity is enhanced in states of mental calm, allowing new neural pathways to form more easily. Rather than fighting against old patterns, we're simply creating conditions where new, healthier patterns can emerge naturally. One of the most powerful aspects of using quietness to dissolve patterns is that it bypasses the conscious mind's resistance to change. Often, when we try to directly challenge or change our thought patterns, we encounter internal resistance. This resistance can actually strengthen the very patterns we're trying to break. Quietness works differently. It doesn't fight against patterns, but simply creates a space where they can naturally unwind. The process begins with recognition. As we cultivate mental quietness, we become more aware of our habitual thought patterns without getting caught up in them. This awareness itself is transformative. We start to see these patterns as temporary mental constructs rather than fixed parts of our identity. This shift in perspective naturally weakens their hold on us. As we continue to practice mental quietness, we may notice that certain thoughts or patterns that once seemed overwhelming begin to lose their intensity. This happens not because we're actively trying to change them, but because the space of quietness allows them to naturally dissolve. It's similar to how a knot in a rope becomes easier to untie when you stop pulling on both ends and instead give it space to loosen. The key is consistency in cultivating mental quietness. Just as patterns are formed through repetition, they are dissolved through regular periods of mental stillness. This doesn't mean we need to spend hours in meditation. Even short periods of mental quietness, practiced regularly, can begin to break up long-standing thought patterns. This process is gentle and gradual. Some patterns may dissolve quickly, while others might take more time. The important thing is to trust in the process and not try to force or rush it. Each moment of quietness is like a drop of water, slowly eroding a rock. The change may not be visible immediately, but over time, the transformation is profound. As old patterns dissolve, we naturally find ourselves responding to life in fresher, more spontaneous ways. We become less bound by habitual reactions and more able to meet each moment with clarity and presence. This freedom from old patterns allows us to experience life more fully and respond more authentically to whatever arises. Lesson 9. Peace of mind comes from no mind. The concept of no mind represents the ultimate state of mental quietude, where thoughts cease to dominate our consciousness and we experience pure awareness. This state, often misunderstood as mindlessness or vacancy, is actually a condition of profound clarity and presence. When we achieve no mind, we transcend the constant chatter of our thinking processes and enter a space of pure being. The journey to no mind begins with understanding that our true nature exists beyond our thoughts. We are not our thoughts, but rather the awareness that observes them. This distinction becomes clearer as we practice silence and observe how thoughts arise and dissipate without our active participation. Through this observation, we start to recognize that peace of mind naturally emerges when we stop identifying with our mental activity. Transitioning from thinking to being requires a fundamental shift in our approach to life. Instead of constantly engaging with thoughts, analyzing situations, and trying to figure everything out mentally, we learn to rest in pure awareness. This state allows us to respond to life's challenges from a place of clarity rather than reactive thinking. When we operate from no mind, our actions flow naturally and appropriately without the interference of excessive mental commentary. The benefits of mental emptiness extend far beyond mere relaxation. In this state, we access deeper levels of creativity, intuition, and understanding. Problems that seemed insurmountable through logical thinking often resolve themselves effortlessly when approached from a state of no mind. Our relationships improve as we become more present and responsive rather than reactive. Our physical health often benefits as well, as the stress of constant thinking subsides. Achieving no mind involves specific techniques that help us disengage from compulsive thinking. One effective approach is to practice being the witness of our thoughts without getting involved in their content. As we maintain this witness perspective, we naturally begin to experience gaps between thoughts. These gaps gradually expand, allowing us to taste the peace of no mind. Another powerful technique involves focusing on sensory experiences rather than mental concepts. By fully immersing ourselves in direct experience, the feeling of breath, the sensation of walking, the sound of rain, we naturally step out of the thinking mind and into pure awareness. This practice helps us realize that life can be lived fully without the constant commentary of thoughts. Breathing awareness serves as a particularly effective gateway to no mind. By maintaining gentle attention on the breath without trying to control it, we create a bridge between thinking and being. The breath exists in the present moment, and by staying with it, we naturally drop out of the time-bound world of thought into the timeless space of pure awareness. Regular practice gradually transforms our relationship with thinking. We begin to notice that thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. while our essential nature remains unchanged, like the sky itself. This understanding allows us to hold thoughts more lightly, without getting caught up in their drama. We discover that peace of mind isn't achieved through better thinking, but through transcending thinking altogether. The state of no mind becomes increasingly accessible with practice, though it's important to approach it without striving or forcing. Any effort to achieve no mind through willpower actually creates more mental activity. Instead, we learn to allow no mind to emerge naturally by creating the right conditions through silence and presence. As we become more familiar with the state of no mind, we find that it doesn't interfere with necessary thinking or practical activities. Instead, it provides a spacious context within which thoughts can arise when needed and subside when not. This natural flow between thinking and non-thinking characterizes the mature expression of no mind, where peace of mind becomes our default state rather than something we need to achieve. This profound state of mental freedom represents the ultimate fruit of mind silence practice, where peace becomes not just a temporary experience, but our fundamental nature. Through no mind, we discover that true peace was never absent. It was simply obscured by our endless thinking. Lesson 10. Silent moments heal noisy thoughts. The journey of mind silence culminates in understanding how moments of stillness serve as powerful medicine for our noisy thoughts. These silent moments, when properly integrated into daily life, create lasting transformation in our mental landscape. What begins as brief intervals of peace gradually expands into a sustained state of mental clarity and emotional balance. Creating a sustainable practice of mind silence requires weaving quiet moments throughout your day. Rather than viewing silence as a destination, treat it as a constant companion that walks beside you. Start your morning with 5 minutes of complete stillness before engaging with the world. This small investment sets a peaceful tone that influences your entire day. As you move through your daily activities, incorporate micro moments of silence, perhaps during your commute, while waiting in line, or between tasks at work. The healing power of these silent moments operates on multiple levels. Physiologically, they activate your parasympathetic nervous system, reducing stress hormones and promoting cellular repair. Mentally, they create space for neural pathways to reset and reorganize, allowing old thought patterns to naturally dissolve. Emotionally, they provide a sanctuary where feelings can be processed without the interference of mental chatter. Consider how a glass of muddy water becomes clear when left undisturbed. Similarly, your mind naturally settles into clarity when given moments of complete stillness. These periods of silence act as a cleansing mechanism, washing away accumulated mental noise and emotional residue. The key is consistency rather than duration. Frequent short periods of silence often prove more beneficial than occasional lengthy sessions. As you develop your practice, you'll notice that silent moments begin to spontaneously emerge throughout your day. Your mind will naturally seek these peaceful intervals, much like how your body instinctively takes deeper breaths when needed. This organic integration of silence becomes a self-sustaining cycle of healing and renewal. The long-term benefits of cultivating silent moments extend far beyond temporary peace. Regular practitioners often report improved sleep quality, enhanced creativity, better decision-making abilities, and more harmonious relationships. The practice creates a buffer zone between external stimuli and internal response, allowing for more measured and conscious reactions to life's challenges. Healing through silence isn't about forcing your thoughts into submission. Instead, it's about creating conditions where mental noise naturally subsides. Think of it as opening windows in a stuffy room. You don't need to push the stale air out. Fresh air naturally flows in when space is made available. Similarly, silent moments create openings through which mental clarity naturally emerges. Develop a rhythm of silence that suits your lifestyle. Perhaps begin with 3 dedicated silent periods each day: morning, midday, and evening. These don't need to be lengthy. Even 2 minutes of complete stillness can initiate the healing process. As you become more comfortable with silence, you'll find yourself naturally extending these periods and discovering additional opportunities for quiet throughout your day. Pay attention to how your noisy thoughts respond to these silent intervals. You might notice that certain thoughts that once seemed overwhelming begin to lose their intensity. Mental patterns that previously ran on autopilot start to slow down and become more manageable. This is the healing power of silence in action. Not fighting against mental noise, but gently dissolving it through presence and stillness. Your practice of mind silence becomes a lifetime journey of discovering ever deeper levels of peace and clarity. Each silent moment contributes to your mental well-being, gradually transforming your relationship with thoughts and creating a more spacious internal environment. Through consistent practice, you develop an unshakable foundation of inner quiet that remains stable regardless of external circumstances.